Hey guys, so we are back for Permission Talk. This is episode 5, and we are so excited about being able to connect with you again. I'm super excited about this topic. We are going to be talking about I'm married to Superman. It's a conversation all about being married to influential men and what that looks like. And so I'm going to jump in. What y'all feeling, girls? What y'all got for me?
Janae has an icebreaker.
I do.
Okay, what's up?
See, I didn't even tell you about this one. Question is, if you can have any superpower in the world, what would it be?
Any superpower?
Want me to do mine?
Yes, please.
So, I have a little bit of FOMO, like
Aw.
fear of missing out, which we trace back. I think I know where it came
you've
from.
come to the root of
Yes,
things.
I come to the root of it.
I love it.
So I would be invisible so that I can,
Be in places and never be left out.
That's really interesting.
It's the truth. It's the
Keisha, what
truth.
is yours?
I would fly.
You would fly. Why?
I don't know, but it's like in all of my dreams,
Uh-huh.
I'm flying. It's like I levitate and then I fly.
Levitate.
I don't know why, but I would connect more to the flying aspect of like what's in my subconscious. I don't know
That's
what it means,
good.
but I would fly.
Mine would probably have something to do with keen sight. I really like clarity. I like to see what's coming. So probably that. Something like superpowers to see.
Okay.
See things that you can't see. I don't know. But not like regular sight. I'm talking about like see in the future. Like see
Okay,
see
not like
ahead.
X-ray vision,
Right.
But like
further.
God, you can.
Yeah, but right.
You already,
The prophetic. I love
You
it. I
already
love
did
it.
us. That's good. All right, so like you mentioned, this is all about being married to Superman, which
Yes.
we were tossing around the idea, and I thought it'd be great for you because you are married to Mr. Superman
Yes,
himself.
yes,
okay,
yes.
Producer,
Actor,
pastor,
singer.
Grammy nominated man.
fashion
singer.
man,
Comedian.
Father. Yes. And so I thought
Speaker.
speaker, all of that, right? I thought it'd be great to give some insight as to your journey with being married to Superman, because I know that hadn't always been easy when the woman of God just kind of supporting and helping to uphold and back all of that. So what is it being like to Clark Kent? If y'all don't know, do y'all know Clark? Okay, anyway.
Tell them who Clark Kent is. Do you
Clark Kent, Superman, right? So Clark Kent is the regular guy who was in dress, right? And then he switches to be Superman. So, and Lois Lane is the person that he used to save and stuff. And so we were talking about like, you start off being Lois Lane, but then you get married, so you're Lois Kent. So now it's a collective.
Yes.
But anyway.
I like both versions of him.
Okay.
So I think some people think like it's only the one with the awards, the one that's on platforms, the one that's singing to 800,000 people in Nigeria. And like I actually like Travis Green. Like I like the regular guy.
T.
I like T, man. Like he is actually a dope person. One thing that I always tell women is before any of the things he did, because all of this started before he had notoriety in public. I love his mind, the way he thinks. He always thinks above or bigger than anything that I had ever seen, especially as it pertains to a man. And so he would always challenge me to see bigger, to have greater vision. He was always a man of faith. And so not only that, even in his natural, just being himself, he had the ability to see, I think, facets of me that I didn't see about myself. And being that I am a woman that, like, I didn't think less of myself or didn't think lowly about myself or bad, so to speak, for him to be able to call out like, hey, I like you in tennis shoes, or like, I like you with your natural hair, or I like the real you. Most guys generally appeal to the very made up, very long and, luscious maybe. I don't know. Yes, I'll go with that. But T was really, or not even just was, he still is very much so about the real. Like, baby, if you feel like just kicking it, kick it. If you feel like laughing really loud, laugh really loud. I love that he always championed the most authentic version of myself. I think that he had a lot to do with me living in the road of permission. And so I just like, he's funny, he's spontaneous, he's romantic, he's a really good guy without all of the added stuff. And so I think he added to me spontaneity and living outside of the box. And so that's a part of the things that I do like. I think what came along with the Superman side of Travis is I feel like he pulled me onto platforms where I had to fly and be able to save people and do things that I didn't know I didn't even know it was in my reservoir. And so long before I even recognized that I had a voice that had value, that I had something to say, he would like leave to go on tours and leave me over to manage a whole church. And like, no, you can preach. And he would say stuff to me like, baby, you have a well and you can do it. And I mean, he wouldn't call, he wouldn't do no trial message with me. And so it was always like this provoking part of him, because he recognized he was Superman. It was like he always saw me as Superwoman. And I didn't always feel like that. I didn't feel like I had a cape for a long time. And so I think a part of the way he viewed me forced me up. But at the same time, it challenged me with this thing about inadequacy, because I can clearly see you're very comfortable with your cape. I'm just kind of starting to figure out if the cape is supposed to be on me. Does it fit? Does it work well? Like, will my superpowers work like his? And so that was really difficult. There were times when he would leave me to have messages. I can remember my eyes burning in the shower from crying so much after messages, because I'm like, Lord, if you knew both of us were called to this, like, why would you allow him to have so many reps of practice with this superpower stuff, and you leave me so far behind in learning superpowers? And what I've come to understand, it was not what I understood as I lived it. I use the word hate very limited, but I hated my process. I hated that I stood up and my legs shaked. I hated that my voice shook. I hated how fast I talked. I hated to listen back to my voice, because he would tell me all the time, you have to listen and learn from your errors and all of these different things. Donnie McClurkin would watch us early on, and he would write and talk about how powerful I was. And I was just like, yo, like, Travis, these people are lying to you. Like, I was terrible. Real story. This really, really happened. The very first time I ever preached for Forward City, there was a lady that still goes to our church right now. She wrote me a dissertation about essentially how I could better organize my thoughts and do better as a speaker. I am not kidding. Like, think about how bad that stings, right? I'm your pastor, and you're writing me to tell me like how I could do this better. And I remember, I will never forget where I was sitting. Like, it was like, and I think that is probably a part of like something that my mama gave me, because I am a student. It was like, it was the greatest humble pie I could ever receive, but it was still like one of those things like, Daddy, like, you really gonna have me out here like this? It helped me. And I actually applied a lot of the stuff that she said. Like, I had the humility, and I think that's probably been the greatest advantage that I've had in the journey. Like, I was never so Superwoman or whatever, Clark, whatever,
That's
Lois,
okay.
Clark,
Yes,
Kent,
we'll go with
whatever, like, that I couldn't be teachable. I was still very much so okay. Like, even if she understands better than me, I'll use this. I won't take it as she's trying to, because she was very polite in the way but it's just no way to receive that politely. Like, it's just like, you know, all right, you suck, and it affirmed that I suck. So it was like, at the same time I was receiving stuff like that, it would be people that would tell me, even as I was in my growing process, like, man, that message that you preached about faith, it was my very first message. They still talk about it to me every single time that they see me, that I recognize that even in my infantile stages of learning my superpowers alongside a man that had it, and he was like flowing in it, and he was doing the thing, that it was okay for me to learn and grow, even though I had to do it very publicly. That was painful, but it was necessary. And it helped women of permission do it, because they saw me actually grow through the process of not liking it and shaking and doing it afraid. So they don't have to hear me say stuff that they didn't see me live.
That's good. I have a question that, like, did you always know that he was Superman? Like, did you, what were some of the signs in like y'all's infantile stages that was like, oh man, like I see something there, and like, just to help us, like, what can we look for?
Okay. I will say that, you know, like, oftentimes people will think to how much money they have and what they drive and how they dress. All three of those were negatives when I first met Travis. And so he could not dress. He had very
don't let him hear you say that.
Oh, he knew. He used to literally wear everything that matched. He would have like a green belt, green shoes, green hat. Like, it was like, I literally bagged up a whole bunch of his clothes and threw it away when we first got together. So like, he's aware. He could not dress at all. He had like these spaceship shades and all of that. I hope they can pull the picture, y'all. It would be really good for your life. But neither here nor there.
I have the picture.
He had a Honda that used to make these noises every time you liked it. It was like, ah! So it was not so Supermanish initially when we started out. And so I literally forgot your question. What was the question?
The question was like, did you always know?
Did I always know? Even, and that's what I was going to say, even with those things not necessarily being things that you would have readily been able to see with the natural eye, what his mind did and the way he believed was always present. Like he always had vision. He always was able to speak about where he was headed. He always had a firm grip on future that made you believe it. Like even if you didn't see it yet, and I think it still shows up in our life today. Like I'm never shocked when Travis says we're going to move into a Best Buy and it actually happens, because before we were seeing hundreds of thousands of people when it was 50. He would talk like that and he would show up on stages like that. Like the electricity and the amount of prophetic and the amount of faith that he would usher into any room. I don't care what, if it was a club, I don't care if it was a boardroom. Travis Green, when he showed up in a room, it was very apparent that he was different than any other man in that room. And so I think that is always a telltale sign. Like when you walk in a room, like do they show up differently than any other man, or are they just common? Or do they speak differently? Do they look at you? Do they challenge you in a way that is different than anybody else? I think that that's a part of the telltale signs of, like, you might be married to something that is uncommon and rare, because he was definitely that, even when he didn't have the things the world would have classified as superpowers on the physical side.
That's good.
Let's take a question.
Okay, so this one is from Queen Candace J.
Okay.
How do you maintain the balance of being a supportive wife without feeling small because of how the limelight is shined on your husband?
So I firmly believe you don't have to have the limelight to know that you're important.
That's good.
So in the times where I was taking care of Travis's children, I understand the question, because there were moments I went through seasons like, oh man, you know, like as long as they have Travis, as long as he shows up, then everybody be okay. As long as Superman shows up, it doesn't even really matter about me. But the more I have come to grips with the reality, Travis would have never been able to show up if I didn't show up to do the things that I was called to do, like nurturing his children, like setting up the business plan and the business side of our finances to sustain the different things that he was called into. Like the foundation of a lot of the things that we actually stand on today was literally on the back of my prayers, and it stood on the back of my tears and me living in the face of the Lord. And so his ability to go away and his children still feel very connected to him, because I always talked about him. We always prayed for daddy. We always faced time. I feel like I found value in the fact that my significance and my call for that season was to be this unseen glue that held it all together. And I think had we not done that, we would have ended up in a space that would have been unhealthy. And I think many marriages find that. They will find where the wife is vying for attention in a time where she really needs to be supporting and building what the father is doing in the other spouse. And it can be vice versa. Sometimes when both are trying to go at the same time, it can be chaotic and hectic. When one could just recognize, this is the role I'm playing right now. One of the most beautiful things that I gained as it pertains to my call is I got a front row seat to how Travis handled a lot of things before they were calling for me. So we would go to airports and they would have signs for Travis Green. I actually know how to handle myself when I get to airport. So we show up to green rooms, because I was in thousands of them before it ever had anything to do with Dr. Jackie. So I'm not showing up afraid. I'm not showing up nervous. I feel very comfortable because I was put in a situation before it had anything to do with myself, so to speak. And so it kind of helped with that.
That's great.
How did you discern when the season had shifted and it was time to kind of like launch out? Like, all right, you know, you've been doing a good job, big girl, supporting, but there was a shift. What was that like? How did you discern that shift?
There was an unsettling in me, and that I had... Honestly, although it was my role and the call for some time, I started to feel like there were moments where we would be in services and I would sense the Lord saying, go on stage and say this. And because I had never done it, and I was so used to, oh no, T got that, or I don't want to mess up his flow. He's Superman. I don't know how to navigate moments. I don't know how to, show up on the news. Like they would start to ask for us to come together. And I was starting to feel like I was even suffocating on my own words. Like, oh my God, like, man, I felt like God told me to go speak to that person. No, T do that kind of stuff. I don't know how to do that. That it started to feel like I was like suffering from paralysis, because I would analyze like, okay, if I do this in this moment, then like, am I going to mess this up? I would overthink. And it was one of the most crippling terrible feelings ever. Like, I became very discontent with using the cloak of I'm just a mommy or I'm just a help me, and not recognizing that I also had something to give. Because if I think back prior to getting married or having children, I was always very much so a woman that had something to give. Like, I am by nature one that affirms, that gives clarity to what's happening in a moment. And for me to leave that area void would be not to show up the full version of who I am. And I had to learn how to do it alongside somebody that is great, but also understand that I am great too, and that moments lack if I don't show up. The lie, I believe, was that it was okay even if I didn't. I came to look through a different lens to recognize that if I don't, something's gonna be missing. And my recognition of the number of people that needed my voice started to make me push through, that it's not about me. This fear and pushing through, going scared, doing it anyway, wasn't really just about myself. It was about the thousands of women that were attached that needed to know that they needed to go and do the same also. So that's what I would say. It's not just for you. Your obedience and your using your voice is not just for you. Think about all the women that wouldn't have been set free if I stayed in the background only.
Sheesh. We wouldn't be here right now.
Right.
None of this permission. None of that.
That part. So it kept me pushing.
I want to highlight something that you helped me with.
Okay.
Just by watching you, walking with you. So I'm married to a very busy.
Yes.
And
Got your own Superman.
He doesn't suck this up.
Absolutely.
But even before being married, I watched you be settled into who Jackie is. Because your husband would travel. He'll go on tour. He'll do X, Y, and Z. But there was such a settledness in, seemed like your identity, and which I know a lot of people have like different insecurities, right? If my husband's on tour, like, can I trust and stuff? But can you walk us through kind of how the Lord settled that in your heart from an insecurity standpoint, so that you could be fully supportive, right? Instead of like we not, when they on tour, so we not like, oh, what you doing? And this is like, we're praying for them and pushing them forward. But that can only come from the Lord settling something in our heart. Can you speak to like the insecurity part?
So a lot of times when I talk about that married to Superman, I talk about the insecurity and vulnerability of having to minister alongside him. One thing that I don't think that I struggled heavily with is if I was enough as a wife to him. And so I think that had a lot to do with, I really believe firmly that when God created me, inside of his creation was everything Travis needed. I believe that I was good enough from an intimacy standpoint. I believe from an intellectual standpoint. I believe from a financial standpoint, like all that I brought to the table with how I was created was enough for him. And so because of my belief, it showed up in my actions. I never thought like, oh, he's going to see somebody else prettier than me, or he's going to find something on the road that would speak to an area that I'm not able to speak to. I believe that when God made me, he made me precisely exactly for what he needed. And for Travis to choose something else, he would be choosing a lesser version of what he needed. Like he would be settling for something counterfeit or something less than. So honestly, it's almost laughable to think like, dude, you would leave this, something that was precisely created for you, to find some off-brand. Like, it was never an option in my mind, like, that he would find something more worthy than what was created for him.
Woo.
I'm his good thing. I'm the thing that he finds and obtains favor with. And so I was really sure and settled in that. And I actually would have to give credit to my mom. My mom is very, and has always been very secure in who she was as a wife. Like, we really believe firmly, like, how we've been created and who we are is enough. Like, nothing added, not to say that we don't grow and God doesn't add to us, but like, a man would do himself a disservice to cheat on me.
And you settled that before the man.
I
think
did.
that's the key
Yeah,
part.
that's what I'm like,
That didn't come because you got attached to a Travis Green. In
every room I walked in,
I believe
I brought
Jumpy was.
Exactly. I brought that
Beforehand.
with me. Like, I was always choice. I was always treasure. A man was always he was favored to even have a conversation with me. And that's not from a haughty place. It's from a place of understanding who I was created to be by the Father. And so I walked into every relationship like that. And that's not to say that I didn't let people treat me less than that. But I do believe that the more I own the reality that, like, I'm a good thing. Like, I'm a sure thing too. Like, you're not somebody that I'm trying to work to just, impress. Like, you should be trying to impress me as well. Like, I believe that I had good to bring. And I think it changes the game on how you show up in relationship and how you function. Like, I don't check his phone for what? Like, I mean, it's almost like not only do I believe that I'm enough, but I also believe that the God he serves is enough also. And that's probably the other part that you would have to bring. More than Travis is just committed to honoring me, he would dishonor the Lord to dishonor me in our marriage. And so you want to have a man that is really, really focused on his honor and his word being true to the Father in integrity. And he cares about that because God is everywhere. I might not be there, but the Father is there. So that's another huge part. You don't want to have to worry about it. Let God handle it.
That's good.
Are y'all picking up what the woman of God is putting down? This is good. Do we have any questions?
Yes, I got another question for you. Now, this one, she said, I am dating my Superman. What advice would you give a woman dating Superman in preparation for marriage, and what would you tell your younger self?
What was
Tell
it?
your
Younger self.
The advice I would give in terms of preparation is the same advice I would give if you had not met him. And the reason why I say that is because oftentimes we believe, because we see this man with all this influence and he has all this going on, that we don't also have this great call and all this going on as well. We start to think about, like, how do I make myself ready for him? How do you make yourself ready for you is the same prescription of how you make yourself ready for him. Because if the truth be true, in that God makes no mistakes, he is already sovereign enough to recognize who you will marry. And when he made you with that Superman in mind. So you don't have to fear that if you just focus on being who God has created you to be authentically, that authentic version of you includes everything that man will need. And so I would say, find out what you like. Find out what you don't like. Start to explore the things that the Father is saying about you, wanting to do in you. Learn dependency on the Lord, because that submission and dependency that you will need in relationship with the Lord is the same submission and dependency you will need in order to be able to honor your spouse and to honor your mates. Like, I didn't learn obedience and submission and learning how to pray and trust from Travis or in marriage. I learned that beforehand in my relationship with the Lord. Like, Daddy, I'm leaning on you. I trust that where you're leading us is good. And as I trust Travis, as he trusts the Lord, it became easy to translate. Like, even in times where I don't agree, where I may say, like, I don't know, T.I., he right out here on this one. Like, I'm not sure if we're heading in the right direction. I trust a God that does know. And the same way he corrected my path in moments where I was going the wrong way, I trust that he'll do that for him. So it doesn't make me put up a fight. Like, no, I ain't going with him. I'm not doing that job. God told me this. God also told you to honor your husband. And inside of honoring your husband, you have to trust that if he is the man that God chose for you, he'll show him too. And this kind of came without thought, but lots of women believe that because they have their own relationship with the Lord, that it's okay to dishonor their husband because they're honoring God. If you dishonor your husband, you're dishonoring the Father too. And it's not supposed to be that way. There are moments where I've had to trust the Lord to tell Travis things that I didn't see the same way, but to trust in patience. I would go with him, I would back him, but I would pray for him because it's what I would have wanted him to do for me. And I don't give him something that I don't want. I'm not going to give him, no, I'm not doing that, and I'm not going there. I'll give him the willingness, the patience, the space to grow and hear from the Lord as well.
The second part was, what would you tell your younger self? So I know you got married when you was 2 days 24.
I was 2 days 24.
Younger.
What would I tell my younger self? You're enough. That's probably the biggest statement overarching in every facet of my life. I think for a long time, I did a lot of striving, whether that was professionally, whether that was in marriage. I strove to make myself be sure, like, okay, am I doing enough? Am I good at this? Am I showing up in the world enough? And like, it's like, girl, just chill, relax, be your real self. Like, take a deep breath. I don't believe we give ourselves the grace enough to just be who we are. It's the greatest gift you give anyone, not just in marriage. And I think that I found that out more. I don't have to prove that I'm a great mentor or a great mama and over show up. I don't have to prove that I am, a great pastor. I can literally be who I've been created to be. And inside of that place of just doing what I feel led by the Lord to do, it be enough. I would relax a lot more. I was very uptight.
I wonder why people be so scared to relax. I know that's not the topic, but I'm like hearing you say that, it seems so like you seem so free, but then I know there's still a struggle internally for people to be like, that just sounds so much easier said than done. But like that it's like, I don't know. It seems very
It has
hard.
everything to do with faith. Because
Okay.
when we think about relax, when we think about freedom, we think about letting go. People don't want to let go because they're not sure if they don't hold it, it would be held.
Okay.
So
Whoa.
the reason I'm able to release Travis, I'm able to release my children, I'm able to release how this podcast goes today, how I show up on stage when I preach, is because I didn't used to. That's why I used to have a hard time letting go. I didn't believe if I didn't overthink about it, if I didn't over prepare, that it would go well. I believed that I was gonna fail. I believe if I didn't hold it, it wouldn't be held. Then if I don't fight for my marriage or the marriage that I want to happen, if I don't show up and keep myself together, how the man gonna come? Like, how it's gonna happen? Like, you can speak to it as well. You were doing nothing other than being who you were created to be, and God did it. It's like, I could have strove all my life to find Keisha Young. I did nothing to find you. God ushered me exactly to where I was supposed to be ushered to, and the best friend I needed was there. And I want that to be screamed louder. People don't recognize Janiyah did nothing to find herself in purpose and in my life other than follow God's leading to Columbia, South Carolina. Like, I think we make it a lot harder. Like, you could have strove with all your might. I needed Janiyah for 3 years before she was there, and there was nothing I could do other than pray. And as I was praying, although I couldn't see her, even at the moment where 3 years prior to her showing up, I started praying, he was already working on it, because he started. What, you're 26? Like, he had her in mind when he created her that she would be here. Like, I think we missed that. Like, long before Travis ever showed up where I could see him visibly, God already had him in mind for me. And when we can settle that, you'll relax more easily. You would release and you would take the weight off of, like, okay, I got to do all these things. Y'all, I couldn't cook. I still can't cook. Like,
Me
all
either.
these lies that the world tells you, like, you got to have this checked off and that checked off. You got to be able to do all this stuff. Like, I mean, the cooking is one of the things that people always talk about. So that comes to mind first. Like, you don't have to, like, oh, you got to have it all together. Like, emotionally, you can't be falling apart. You have to be settled. You got to have, man, I can't tell you how many nights Travis has had to rock me through my insecurities. Like, I remember I took the weave out. I learned to I cut my hair while I was married. I had insecurities in ministry while I was married. Like, I had daddy issues while I was married. I didn't have it all together. And I want to debunk and push back, like, that you have to do all of this stuff for God to bring him. When the person or the thing that God wants to show up in your life has everything to do with what God wants to happen, it has nothing to do with you qualifying or being worthy of it, because you already are qualified and worthy. It has nothing to do with qualifications and worthiness. It has to do with divine timing, because he knows when your children are supposed to be birthed. He knows when that part of ministry is supposed to happen. Like, it's really just about divine timing, and you can relax and wait for him to do it, because the truth is, you're gonna wait anyway.
Yep.
You might as well have a good time, enjoy your friends, and love yourself. Actually know yourself better. Heal areas that maybe you were waiting and putting off on doing. Girl, take a deep breath and enjoy life, and do the thing that you would do before they would show up, because it's gonna be the thing you'll need when they do.
That's so good. Because I live both sides.
Okay.
I was the girl that subscribed to the notion of, like, you got to be this girl, this why you not
You gotta
married.
keep yourself together.
Yeah, this why he ain't came yet, because you got to do this and that. And then I did all of that, and he still didn't show up. And I was like, okay, now, Lord, like, what's happening? And then you were just kind of like, Keisha, like, God got you. And it probably was another 4 years before he showed up.
But did he show up on time?
He showed up on time, and then I enjoyed those 4 years, so that when I entered into marriage, I didn't feel like I missed out on anything, which I feel like I hear sometimes of people like, oh, I should have enjoyed it in my singleness, or now they resent marriage or resent the whole commitment, or I got to talk to my husband before I do this. And I'm like, no, like, when you live fully the season that God has placed you in, I had to start telling myself that I'm not just suffering through this season so I got to this next season. I'm like, if the Lord is here present in this season, then it is good, because he's good. And the next season will be good too. But this season is not for me just to endure because, you know, my husband not here. No, let me live this thing out. And when I got that in my heart, I was able to just work the field. And then it was just like, boom, and he showed up, and I had a bad wig. I had the worst acne ever that I never had skin issues. When I met my husband, I had the worst skin issues ever. But it showed that I didn't have to be perfect or nothing that I did. You know, he was going to show up, you know, when it was
I want you to
time.
speak to this, because I hear this all the time. And it was a conversation you and I had. people start to do all these things, these godly things, like I'm gonna be celibate, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do, God, I did all this and I did all that in order to feel like they now can get the check mark and God will send a man, like they're doing this stuff for something. Like, how did you break out of that?
It's funny. I had a conversation with one of my little sisters before, right? So we were walking through her becoming celibate, and she had went through like a stretch, but then she called me and was like, I fell, and now, God's not going to bless me and this and that. I had been working up for like the past 6 months or a year. And I'm like, sis, listen, it doesn't matter if it's been 6 months or a year, like your years that you're checking off in your celibacy is not making you more higher up or worthy on his list to bless. It's like he just looks at the heart. So whether it had been 6 days or 6 months, you're not working towards checking off these things to move the hand of God. Like you helped me with that. You were like, you do these things for righteousness, like unto your Father, because he's called you to do that. Not so you can try to manipulate the Lord to send you something. Because you can't. You can't. And you start to have like this holier than thou. Well, I've been doing this and that. Or if you fall, then you're unable to give yourself. Yeah, you're in the pit. You can't even receive the grace that he's given to you because you're like, I've thrown everything away, and it's just like breathe, like you said, breathe. That is the.
You're not what you do.
You're not what you do, and one is not like you don't have this check marks of things that put you higher on the list.
Okay, now I'm ready.
Now I'm ready, or I'm gonna get an A1. I'm gonna get a Superman now. I don't save myself.
Superman worthy.
Yeah, I'm Superman worthy, and it's just like, no, baby, you're worthy.
You're Superwoman.
Like just receive it and believe it, but it's not because of your acts or trying to manipulate a situation. Like both women were worthy. Like both of whether she had failed, been 6 years or had been 6 months, like they both are worthy of the fullness of everything that the Lord had set aside for them. And so, yeah.
And they'll receive it.
And they'll both receive it. And just because you receive, like, it's not a competition. That's something that got, like, if she get it first. If she get it first, or, my friends are getting married, and it's like, baby, all you need is one. And that's why I tell myself, I did not need I didn't need a whole tribe of dudes that loved the Lord and did this and that. I was like, all I need is just one. And I believe that the Lord
is the right one.
Yeah, I believe he's powerful enough to send me the right one. And PJ getting married is not like, dang, well, ain't no more out here. It's like, it doesn't take. So I could be happy for people when they got married and be in their weddings and stuff and not feel like, oh, my time will never come. That has nothing to do with me. Like, this is not like a pie.
That's faith talk.
Yeah, it's like, it's not a pie that it's like, oh, if this person gets 75%, now I'm left with 25. Maybe we run our own race. And like, according to my faith, I shall receive every single thing that the Lord, because I will endure. Like, I'm going to stay the course. And so that was something that it was helpful for me during those seasons.
Really good. Any other questions?
Yeah. One of the questions was, how do you maintain and support your husband being Superman and the assignment that God has on his life, but still get what you need from him?
That's heavy. And that was really hard for me. So because of Travis's platform in his pool, and I already knew the demand, he would go out and he would have already traveled, and I know he had to speak to thousands of people, and we would have little things back home, in my opinion, like, oh, I'm having a time where I actually need emotional support, or I got these 2 children, and maybe I'm struggling with knowing, like, should they do this camp or whatever, and I wanted his input, like, I would feel like that was unworthy of Superman. Like, Jackie, you need to figure this out. That's good. I remember crumbling under the weight of, like, I just got to make all the decisions myself because he has his things that he's dealing with, they're too big. And I remember one time he came back home when I was at an end, and I can remember I was pregnant with our 3rd kid, and it's something about when you get pregnant, what you held before. I vomit generally when I get pregnant. Like, everything I've been holding, and it's like, yeah, and I had this going on and you weren't there, and blah, 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 blah. He was like, who told you couldn't ask me? Like, who said that was unworthy of calling me? Like, Jackie, I would much rather be present for you than anybody. And he had to help me to recognize that what I was dealing with and I was handling was also worthy too, if not even more worthy. Yep. Because the truth is, the first family, his first call in ministry is to us. And he freed me to not end up suffocating on those words anymore, because I decided that wasn't his problem. And I had to become a better advocate for myself. There were times where I needed help, and I would never say it because I just got to hold it down because T is already doing so much, and it made me feel like then I'm doing something worthy too. Like I had a lot going on. I might have not been on stages, but I was on the stage of mamahood, and I was on the stage of Forest City, and it was still worthy. And he really kind of helped me to like, baby, bring it. Like, I don't care how busy I am. I'll pause in any green room.
Yep.
I'll pull over. I'll do whatever it takes. And it added so much fruitfulness to our marriage as a result. So, yeah, that was really good. Really good question. Took me a while.
Want to do one more?
Yeah, that sounds good.
So this one is from Courtney. She says, as Superwoman, do you have super friends, perhaps a community of women that you lean on? Or is that just you and your husband lean on other married couples?
Absolutely. You're looking at it. So it's tables like this that I find places of safety. So there's nothing that I could experience that I couldn't go to somebody at this table to speak to. Now, it is an interesting balance in that my husband is their pastor. And so I don't go and divulge every single thing that Travis and I go through. Like if he getting on my nerves, like I'm not coming to come down. But because they are so in tune with who I am, because they deal with similar issues, they are aware when I'm off. And even if I don't have a conversation, I do have women that support me in prayer, other super women that are aware and keenly aware of how to pray me through, or like she's having a lot going on, she's poor. And then I go to our spiritual parents that also will check us and remind us that we are too just Jackie and Travis. Like before we are Clark Kent and Lois. And all them, we are just regular husband and wife to each other. And so, yes, and not only them, I have several other married couples that have similar bents. Like they have the same struggles and different things that they have to navigate that we reach to a lot of times. We do couples with couples retreats and different things like that with them, and kind of talk about our rare struggles and find ways to kind of combat them. So yeah, I lean on community really heavily. Any other questions, thoughts y'all got?
This is good.
It was good for me personally.
What was good for you?
Just like the perspective, and it was a lot that I think, because I think in a lot of these conversations as a single person, you can often just let it like go over your head. But there's so much that you can apply right now. And especially in your relationship with the Father, like being submissive and not learning how to take his instruction and stuff like that. Like it's so much that you just don't have to like let fly over you. Like in this season, and I also love sitting at this table because it shows me how much the Father thinks of me, that he would let me hear stuff like this now.
Whoa.
And how much it's almost like an investment to me. Like, baby, listen.
Whoa.
Listen. I'm
not preparing you.
Right. I'm not letting you hear this for no reason. I'm not letting you experience this stuff for no reason. It's really, it makes me feel loved.
It's funny that you brought that up because it reminded me of a all staff we had, which is where we get with our staff. And I was saying to them that every time the Lord gives a word or he throws out seed, he's making an investment in you because he knows that it's to yield a harvest. It is to prepare you for something to come. And so I really love that you brought that to the table. One beautiful thing about that singleness and what the Father teaches you, Travis always, every time I ask him, like, what do you love most about me? Like, why do you love me? He always tells me it's like my steady. Like he was like, no matter how emotional or, because he's very, I don't want to say emotional. He had very passionate. Like he has very live emotions, and he was like, "You're always a steady place. Like you're always content. Like you're always like just like the calm to my storm." That came from my relationship with God. It didn't come from marriage. It came from me walking with the Lord to recognize like there'll be things that happen in life, but God is sure He's steady, and I don't have to get all in a ruckus. And so I believe that I add that level of peace, even in the times where the boat could be rocking. I'm just like, baby, we're good. Like, even if it didn't happen the way we expected, even if something catches us off rhythm or off beat or spontaneous, I'm like, oh, no, God's on this boat, baby. Yeah. Like, I'm always want to remind myself or remind us of that because it was something I used to do long before I had him. And so I love that you even pointed back to that as well. Like, there's a lot that you can gain that you'll be able to give in marriage that will be useful and fruitful. So I hope this conversation was helpful just for the ladies that are kind of navigating this space of walking into relationship, maybe dating dating men of influence. And so, yeah, I love y'all. We'll see y'all for next episode.
Hey, ladies. Well, I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. I know we did. It was a great conversation. So make sure that you are following along for everything, because we did some little behind the scenes as well. So we'll be going live in Permission World for that. Janiyah, tell them what Permission World is.
Permission World, Dr. Jackie's online Facebook group. It's a place of community. It's a place of freedom. Share your testimonies. Get to know other women. I'm telling you, it's a special place to be. And I want y'all to like, share, subscribe, but most importantly, comment. Okay?
Let us know.
Let us know. Ask your questions. We want to know. We want to talk straight to you whatever problems you may be dealing with. So make sure you comment below.
All right. See you next time.
Love y'all.
Love y'all.